Imagine stepping into a vintage car, a time capsule on wheels, filled with features that were once revolutionary, but now seem downright peculiar. Back then, driving wasn't just about convenience. It was about tackling the quirks and challenges of the road with innovative and sometimes odd solutions. From hand-crank starters that tested your patience and strength to floor-mounted high-beam switches that had you tapping your foot like a drummer, these features were necessities of their time. Ashtrays in every door? Of course, because who didn't smoke while cruising? And let's not forget windshield defrosters that barely did their job, or quirky pop-out turn signals that looked more like decorations than safety features. Today, these relics of the past remind us of just how far cars and technology have come. So buckle up as we take you on a nostalgic ride through 13 bizarre car features that were once must-haves, but now stand as quirky monuments to a different era of driving. Number 13. Unpadded steering wheels, made entirely of metal, are an unsettling reminder of a time when automotive safety was still in its infancy. At first glance, these steering wheels look sleek and sturdy, reflecting the engineering of a bygone era when the focus was more on functionality and design than on driver protection. However, beneath that tough exterior lay a serious hazard. In the event of an accident, the rigidity and hardness of the metal could cause devastating injuries. In a frontal collision, it was common for the driver to strike the steering wheel directly, resulting in severe chest impacts were often fatal or left permanent damage. What's most concerning is that during that time, safety systems like seatbelts and airbags were neither widespread nor as advanced as they are today. This meant the metal steering wheel often became one of the first points of contact in any crash, amplifying the harm. Thankfully, over time, the automotive industry evolved and began prioritizing driver safety. Padded steering wheels and designs with controlled deformation zones became the norm, drastically reducing the risk of injury. Number 12. Non-laminated glass is another example of how automotive safety has made significant strides over time. In the past, vehicles were equipped with glass that, while serving its basic purpose of providing visibility, became a lethal threat in the event of an accident. Unlike modern laminated glass, which is designed to hold fragments together after an impact, these older glass panes shattered into thousands of sharp pieces, turning into deadly projectiles. Imagine a high-speed collision. The impact would cause the glass to explode in all directions, sending razor-sharp shards flying toward the occupants. The injuries could be devastating: deep cuts to the face and hands, severe eye injuries, and in many cases, blindness. Even minor accidents could leave permanent physical and emotional scars. This issue was especially dangerous with windshields, as the driver and front passenger were most exposed to the glass explosion. Number 11. Inefficient drum brakes are a striking reminder of the challenges faced by early vehicles as the automotive industry took its first steps toward innovation. At the time, drum brakes were considered a technological breakthrough, offering drivers improved control and reliability compared to earlier braking systems. However, they came with significant limitations that posed serious safety risks, especially under demanding conditions. One of the most critical issues was overheating. Drum brakes worked by creating friction between a set of shoes and the inner surface of a rotating drum, effectively slowing the vehicle. However, during prolonged use, such as navigating steep descents, heavy traffic, or situations requiring frequent braking, this friction generated an immense amount of heat. The heat caused the metal drums to expand, which in turn reduced the contact area between the shoes and the drum surface. This phenomenon, known as brake fade, dramatically decreased braking efficiency and left drivers in potentially dangerous situations. Imagine driving down a long mountain road with sharp curves and a vehicle loaded with passengers or cargo. As the brakes heated up with continuous use, the driver would feel the pedal becoming less responsive, requiring more force to achieve the same level of braking, or worse, no significant braking power at all. In critical moments, this could mean the difference between stopping safely and a catastrophic accident. Number 10. The absence of seat belts, or the presence of rudimentary two-point belts, is one of the most striking realities in the history of automotive safety. During the early decades of the automobile, driver and passenger protection was not a priority. If seat belts were included at all, they were limited to a simple two-point design, similar to those still used in airplanes today, which secured only the waist. This system left critical areas of the body, such as the chest, head, and neck, completely unprotected, leaving them to absorb the brunt of the impact in a collision. In the event of a crash, the forces involved would propel the body forward with devastating intensity, often resulting in severe or even fatal injuries. Statistics from the time revealed that many drivers and passengers suffered skull fractures, broken ribs, and internal trauma due to the lack of proper restraint. To make matters worse, the interior designs of vehicles at the time featured rigid, unpadded surfaces, which amplified the danger. It was not uncommon for victims to be ejected from their vehicles entirely, as the two-point belts provided minimal resistance. The development and introduction of three-point seat belts by Volvo in 1959 marked a revolutionary shift in automotive safety. This design not only secured the waist, but also protected the chest and shoulder, distributing the forces of impact more evenly across the body and significantly reducing the risk of injury. As three-point belts became mandatory in most countries, fatalities and serious injuries in car accidents saw a dramatic decline. The evolution from inadequate or non-existent seatbelts to the modern three-point design underscores the importance of prioritizing safety in vehicle development. It serves as a powerful reminder of how far we've come in protecting drivers and passengers on the road. Number 9. The hard metal dashboards, common in cars of yesteryear, serve as a grim reminder of a time when automotive safety was almost non-existent. These dashboards, made entirely of steel or aluminum, lacked any form of padding or elements designed to absorb impacts. While they may have appeared sturdy and stylish, in reality they posed a deadly threat to vehicle occupants in the event of a collision. Imagine a moderate-speed frontal crash. The driver and passengers, often without proper seat belts, would be violently thrown forward with brutal force. Instead of cushioning the impact, the dashboard acted as a rigid barrier, leading to severe injuries such as skull fractures, facial trauma, and internal damage. Even minor accidents could turn into traumatic events with lasting physical and psychological consequences. Children and front seat passengers were especially vulnerable. In many cases, they traveled without any form of restraint or protection, exponentially increasing the risk of injury. During the 1940s and 1950s, reports of severe and fatal injuries in car accidents frequently cited the hard metal dashboard as a primary culprit. The dangers of these rigid dashboards underscored the urgent need for safer interior designs. Thankfully, as awareness of automotive safety grew, padded dashboards and energy-absorbing materials became standard, transforming the interior of vehicles into far safer environments for all passengers. Number 8. Rigid steering columns are among the most terrifying elements in the history of automotive safety. During the early decades of the 20th century, steering columns were entirely fixed, rigid structures designed solely to connect the steering wheel to the front wheels. Mechanically, they fulfilled their purpose perfectly, but in practice, they concealed a deadly risk for drivers. In the event of a frontal collision, the force of the impact would push the column directly toward the driver, turning it into a spear capable of causing fatal injuries such as punctures to the chest or abdomen. Picture the scene: a driver involved in a sudden collision, and in the blink of an eye, the steering column becomes a lethal threat. These types of accidents not only resulted in devastating physical injuries, but also instilled great fear among drivers of the time. Frequently, these columns were responsible for internal trauma, fractured ribs, and irreversible damage to vital organs, making even low-speed crashes potentially tragic. It wasn't until the mid-1960s that steps were taken to address this danger. Automotive engineers developed collapsible steering columns designed to compress during an impact instead of penetrating the cabin. This revolutionary advancement saved countless lives by absorbing much of the crash's energy and protecting drivers from severe injuries. Over time, regulations mandated that all manufacturers include collapsible columns in their vehicles, marking a major milestone in the evolution of automotive safety. Number 7. Poorly positioned fuel tanks are a dark chapter in the history of automotive safety. In the early designs of many vehicles, fuel tanks were placed near the rear bumper, a decision that proved catastrophic in terms of safety. While this location may have seemed practical for design and weight distribution, it posed an alarming risk in the event of a rear-end collision. A direct impact could damage the tank, causing fuel leaks that, if ignited by a spark, could lead to devastating fires or explosions. It didn't take long for fatal accidents linked to this design flaw to accumulate. A particularly infamous example is the Ford Pinto, a compact car from the 1970s that gained notoriety for its fuel tank positioned just behind the rear axle. Tests and real-world incidents revealed that even low-speed rear impacts could puncture the tank. Combined with sparks from metallic components, this dramatically increased the risk of fires. The tragedies associated with this design flaw not only resulted in the loss of lives, but also deeply eroded public trust in the automotive industry. The Pinto's case became a symbol of the dangers of prioritizing cost and convenience over safety, ultimately leading to stricter regulations and a shift towards safer fuel tank placements in modern vehicles. Number 6. Doors without automatic locks represent one of the most unsettling dangers of the early days of the automotive industry. During that era, vehicle doors lacked locking systems to ensure they stayed securely closed while the car was in motion. This meant that a sudden turn, a bump in the road, or even a passenger accidentally leaning against the door could cause it to swing open unexpectedly. The consequences of such a mishap or a faulty latch were potentially devastating. Passengers, especially children, were at a high risk of falling out of the moving vehicle. Stories of accidents caused by doors suddenly opening were not uncommon, and many families endured tragedies due to the absence of a basic safety feature we take for granted today. In some cases, even a sudden stop was enough to cause the doors to unlock, turning what should have been a simple trip into a catastrophic event. The risk was even greater in vehicles without seat belts, as occupants were far more likely to be ejected from the car if the doors swung open. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that manufacturers began implementing automatic door locks. These systems either locked the doors once the vehicle was in motion or allowed the driver to control the locks manually from the interior. This advancement, combined with the introduction of seat belts and other protective measures, radically transformed passenger safety. The implementation of automatic locks significantly reduced accidents caused by doors opening unexpectedly, marking an essential step forward in automotive safety. Number 5. Seats without headrests were a common feature in cars for much of the 20th century, and their absence posed a significant safety risk for occupants. In the event of a rear-end collision, the sudden and unexpected movement of the vehicle would cause the bodies of the driver and passengers to be violently thrust forward and then snapped backward. Without a headrest to provide proper support, this motion could result in severe neck injuries such as the dreaded whiplash, a soft tissue injury in the neck that could lead to chronic pain, loss of mobility, and even neurological damage. Whiplash was such a common injury that for decades it was considered an almost inevitable consequence of rear-end collisions, even at low speeds. Without the necessary support, the neck was left completely exposed to the impact, and the cervical vertebrae were subjected to excessive strain, often with long-term consequences. Victims of these injuries frequently faced weeks or months of recovery, undergoing treatments that included immobilization, physical therapy, and in severe cases, surgery. The absence of headrests not only increased the likelihood of injury, but also highlighted the need for improved passenger safety in vehicle design. Over time, headrests became a standard feature in car seats, offering much-needed support and drastically reducing the occurrence and severity of whiplash injuries in rear-end collisions. This advancement marked a crucial step forward in the evolution of automotive safety. Number 4. The biased and short-lived tires common in 20th century automobiles represent another chapter in the story of automotive safety evolution. These tires, also known as diagonal tires, were constructed with layers of fibers placed at opposing angles. While this design provided some rigidity, it came at the expense of limited grip and durability. In demanding road conditions, their performance left much to be desired. They offered poor traction, especially on wet or slippery surfaces, and their accelerated wear further compromised their reliability over time. EMA. Number 3. Low-intensity headlights, common in early automobiles, were a major challenge for road safety. These lighting systems, typically powered by acetylene gas or low-powered electricity, were barely capable of illuminating a few meters ahead of the vehicle. On unlit roads and in adverse conditions such as rain, fog, or nighttime driving, their limited visibility placed drivers in extremely dangerous situations, as reacting to obstacles or sudden changes in the road was nearly impossible. Imagine driving down a rural road in total darkness, relying on a dim beam of light that barely reveals the outline of the path ahead. The risks were enormous, from failing to detect sharp curves to not spotting pedestrians, animals, or parked vehicles in time. Additionally, these headlights provided uneven illumination, casting shadows and reflections that could further confuse the driver. To make matters worse, the lamps wore out quickly, often leaving drivers stranded without any lighting in the middle of nowhere. These shortcomings highlighted the urgent need for more reliable and effective vehicle lighting systems. Over time, the development of modern headlights with brighter and more consistent illumination significantly improved visibility and safety, reducing the risks associated with driving in low-light conditions. Number 2. Unassisted steering is another aspect that highlights the challenges faced by drivers in the early decades of automotive history. Before the advent of power steering, turning the wheel required significant physical effort, especially at low speeds or when performing complex maneuvers like parking or navigating tight corners. This lack of mechanical assistance not only made driving exhausting, but also complicated emergency maneuvers, where every second and degree of steering could mean the difference between avoiding an accident or being involved in one. Imagine sitting behind the wheel of a classic vehicle, trying to swerve around a sudden obstacle on the road. Without power steering, the driver would need to exert a tremendous amount of force to turn the wheel quickly, making movements slower and less precise. In emergency situations, such as avoiding a pedestrian or reacting to a stopped vehicle, this limitation could prove fatal. The challenge was even greater in larger vehicles like trucks or buses, where unassisted steering required extreme physical effort, particularly on uneven terrain. The introduction of power steering revolutionized the driving experience, making it safer, less physically demanding, and far more responsive in critical moments. This advancement not only improved everyday driving, but also played a significant role in enhancing road safety overall. Number 1. The sharp metal fins and ornaments that were so popular on classic mid-20th century vehicles are a clear example of how design often took precedence over safety during that era. These decorative elements, which included arrow-shaped emblems, pointed tips, and prominent fins, were intended to showcase the elegance and dynamism of the automobile. However, while visually striking, they posed a significant danger to both pedestrians and the vehicle's occupants in the event of an accident. In collisions or pedestrian impacts, these rigid, pointed ornaments could cause severe injuries, such as deep cuts, punctures, and serious trauma. For pedestrians, an encounter with a car adorned with these decorations could turn what might have been a minor collision into a devastating event. Even drivers and passengers were not immune to the risks. In more serious accidents, these adornments could break loose, becoming dangerous projectiles both inside and outside the vehicle. As automotive safety standards evolved, manufacturers began phasing out such hazardous designs, focusing instead on features that prioritize the protection of both pedestrians and vehicle occupants. This shift marked an important step toward balancing aesthetics with safety, ultimately making cars not only more stylish, but also much safer for everyone on the road. As we've seen, the evolution of cars is a fascinating journey that highlights how far we've come in prioritizing safety. The dangerous features of older vehicles, like unpadded dashboards, rigid steering columns, and poorly positioned fuel tanks, serve as reminders of a time when innovation often prioritized style and function over protection. While these designs may now seem outdated or even shocking, they paved the way for the advanced safety technologies we rely on today, such as airbags, seat belts, and crumple zones. These advancements have not only made driving more secure, but have also saved countless lives. Reflecting on these past challenges reminds us of the importance of progress and innovation. If you enjoyed this trip through automotive history, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. What features surprised you the most? Be sure to like and subscribe for more.